What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and in this video we're going to be going over another vampire format deck, and this is actually a pretty cool one, although it may be cool, but it also is very, very degenerate. Now, if any of you out there are familiar with GOAT format, then you know how powerful a card Tsukuyomi is in that format. In fact, it's the backbone of a very powerful deck, GOAT Control, which basically aims to bring out a Thousand Eyes Restrict, and then use Tsukuyomi to basically flip it down, flip it up again at the end of the turn, and suck up another monster. However, this combo didn't quite work in Vampire format because of the way that battle position rules worked at the time. So basically, at this point in the game's history, when a monster, changed positions, that was basically your only manual change per turn. So what do I exactly mean by that? Well, let's say that you have a monster in attack position on your side of the field, and you activate Book of Moon, and Book of Moon flips that monster face down to defense position. Now, that has changed its battle position from attack to defense, and normally you'd only get one chance to change that manually per turn. So, at this point in the game's history, that actually counted as the manual change, even though it was done through an effect. Now, this doesn't quite work if, you do a manual change first and then you activate an effect to change the battle position. You can still do that because effects don't really have the same restrictions, but for some reason, Upper Deck or Konami or whoever was in charge of the game was making it so that, effect changes would count for the manual change per turn. All that's to say that basically, you can't pull off the Thousand Eyes Restrict loop in the same way. You can still kind of do it because what you have to do is you have to switch Thousand Eyes Restrict to defense position. And then on the following turn, you have to use Tsukuyomi to flip it down, and then you can flip it up into face up attack position because this battle position hadn't changed before that. It had just been set face down, from face up to face down. So you can still kind of do it, but it takes more turns, and so it's not like you can do the loop every single turn, which basically makes the deck a lot worse. That's why Tsukuyomi is not as good of a card in this format as it is in others. You also can't really use it to, reuse flow effect monsters in quite the same way. You could still do it somewhat, and we'll actually see that in this deck, but it's not as flexible as it is in GOAT format. So people aren't really playing this card as much, and it also makes sense given the amount of other very powerful cards in this format. However, there is one deck that can take advantage of it, and that's what I want to show off here. And this deck is very degenerate, as I mentioned. Basically, it aims to use Tsukuyomi to reuse the effect of Mask of Darkness to continually add time seals from your graveyard to your hand. If you can set up a time seal every turn, it essentially is a Yata lock, even though it's a bit more of a convoluted one. And since the Yata lock is pretty good if you can pull it off, that's what this deck is aiming to do. Now, this actually does have some benefits over the Yata lock. For instance, if your opponent has a monster on field, you can still do this loop, continually setting down Mask of Darkness, bring back Time Seal, and then setting that Time Seal for the next turn. Your opponent can't quite deal with that if they don't have a way to actually deal with your mask set face down, and that's why we're playing things like Sakuretsu Armor, Ring of Destruction, Mirror Force, Solemn Judgment, etc., just to protect our Mask of Darkness as much as possible to preserve our loop. These are also good traps that Mask of Darkness can get back. For the other monsters in the deck, we have Magical Scientist, which also pairs pretty well with Tsukuyomi, as if a monster that Magical Scientist brings out with its effect is set face down with Tsukuyomi, it actually won't return to the extra deck at the end of the turn. So this can be a good way to basically set up a fusion monster with that over the course of 2 turns. And you can even do the Thousand Eyes Restrict play, although as I mentioned, it's really not as good as it is in GOAT format. For the other monsters, we've got Triple Gravekeeper Spy. This can help you wall up to sort of preserve your life points for once you get to the lock. This can also be a monster to set back down with Tsukuyomi and get out another spy later in the game. So, continually thinning your deck and getting more monsters on field. We've also got a Sangan and a Witch, which can search out any piece of our combo here. Well, Witch can't search out spies, but, the combo of Mask and Suk, these are all very easily searchable off Sangan and Witch. And lastly, we've got a Yata Garasu, as we are trying to set up the Yata lock, essentially, but it might take some time, and so every resource that we can deprive our opponent of is pretty good. So I do like Yata here as sort of a backup in case you can't quite set up the loop early enough. For the spells, we got Change of Heart, Confiscation, Dark Hole, Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, Mirage of Nightmare, Monster Reborn, Triple MST, Painful Choice, Pot of Greed, Raigeki, and Forceful Sentry. For the traps, we got Call of the Haunted, Imperial Order, Mirror Force, Ring of Destruction, and then here's where things get interesting. Triple Stack Red Stormer, Triple Solemn Judgment, and Triple Slime Seal, as I mentioned before. Most decks don't really play this extensive of a trap lineup, but with the Mask of Darkness, it really does make sense. And, as we saw from the Vampire Tournament results, Sacred Armor can be pretty good in this format. So, for the spells, we're just playing the most powerful ones, and then for the traps, we're really loading up there. For the side deck, I wasn't quite sure exactly what to put in. I think after playing some of the games that I feature in the video, I think I'd put in more Dust Tornadoes, as having those are a great way to out Royal Decree, and also it does deal with certain other decks that do play a lot of back row. But for our back row, we've just got the Dust Tornado and Harpy's Feather Duster and Heavy Storm here. And I do think that adding more Dust Tornadoes would be good. I also have a Snatch Deal here. The idea here is that, like, if your opponent is on more of an aggressive deck, you can Snatch Deal one of their monsters, summon out Sook, and then, set down that monster. The Snatch Deal will be destroyed, and you'll manage to keep the monster. So I don't think this is quite good enough to put in the main deck, but I do think that against certain matches, it can be pretty good. We've got to Poison the Old Man for, like, burn matchups. This is kind of just like the 15th side deck card. But maybe, you'd add more of these or less of these depending on experimentation. This deck is still very much in its infancy, so a lot of this stuff here is just sort of to test out and see. We've got Double Nobleman to Crossout and Triple Book of Moon here in case we want to get a little bit more aggressive or we want, like, more ways to protect our Mask of Darkness. I do think the Nobleman of Crossout might be good enough to go in the main if we are playing Triple Tsukuyomi. It can be pretty nice as you set down your opponent's monster, Nobleman of Crossout it away, and then attack in for damage. But that doesn't quite get you to your winning combo. It just deals a little bit more damage, so that's why it's in the side deck instead of the main. But it is something definitely to consider. For the side deck monsters here, we've got Breaker the Magical Warrior, again, for more spell and trap removal. We've got Injection Fairy Lily if we want to get a little bit more aggressive. Same with Tribe Infecting Virus and Sinister Serpent to pair with it. If we just want to get more aggressive, if our opponent's walling up with things like Spies, then, this could be good to get. And lastly, we have a Fiber Jar here. Fiber Jar is not in the main, as this deck wants to keep your opponent on very low resources, and you also want to set up the Time Seal Mask Lock, so Fiber Jar can oftentimes be counterproductive for you, but it is here in the side for certain matchups. Also going second, this card can be a little bit better, as it can help you recover from being sacked if your opponent goes first. For the Fusion deck, we got the standard Fusion deck in this format. Dark Balls for the Terrible, Dark Flare Knight, Dark Fire Dragon, Dragons to the Wicked Knight, Fiend Skull Dragon, Reaper on the Nightmare, Super Robole, Super Robo-Yaru, Lost Warrior from Another Planet, and Thousand Eyed Restrict. But again, in Vampire format, the Fusion deck is unlimited, so you can sort of like proxy any Fusion monster that's not here. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown. I don't think that this deck is perfect by any means. I think that this exact build can be optimized, but hopefully it will be good enough to give you an idea of what this deck aims to do and also how degenerate it is. Okay, we've got a game against Dump Truck here. A frequent guest on the channel, always a pleasure to have them on, although they might not find it a pleasure when they find out what deck we're playing. But we are going to win the rock, paper, scissors, so we do go first. And this is a pretty great opener, all things considered. We've got Painful Choice here, so we can send triple hand rips and potentially some graveyard setup. So we're going to send those 3 hand rips, send a Mask of Darkness, and send a Time Seal. We want the Time Seal in rotation. We figure they're not going to give us any of the hand rips. If they give us Time Seal, that's fine. We get the Time Seal lock sort of started. We've also got Sangan to search out a Mask. If they give us the Mask, then we can set Mask and get back Time Seal later. So I feel good about that. So I think this is a good starting 5 to send off the Painful here. And our opponent is going to think about this and give us a Mask. So that makes sense from their perspective. They're trying to sort of buy a little bit more time, as, if we had a Mask in hand, then giving us the Time Seal here would basically start the lock right away. So we got to think about this. We could just commit the Mask and just go for the lock right now, but we don't really have protection for the Mask, so I'd rather just go for a Sangan here. We'll set Solemn in the back row. This could bait out like an MST, and I'm fine with that. But we probably won't be using this Solemn anytime soon. Our opponent's going to go for a Pot of Greed here, draw 2. They're going to fire a Painful Choice of their own. We'll just let that go through. Not really worth Solemning this. Especially if they don't necessarily send 5 bombs. And they are indeed not going to do that. We're going to give them the Reinforcement of the Army here. So now they can Reinforcement out like an Exiled Force or a DD Warrior, which would be annoying. They're going to fire Forceful, and I could potentially Solemn this, but I don't really want to. I want to save Solemn for like a choke point in what they're doing, where I can really sort of mess up their game plan here. Also, Sangan can search out any of the monsters that they might shuffle back. The real risk here is if they send back Raigeki, but, I don't know. I don't really think it's worth Solemning a Forceful to save our Raigeki. They're going to send back the Mask there. Shuffle that back in. And they're going to go for a reinforce of the army here, grabbing a DD Warrior Lady, having the read that we have not set the mask face down. They're going to bring out that DD Warrior Lady. We could have potentially Solemn Judgmented this just to prevent it from hitting the field and keeping our Sangan online. But if they banish our Sangan, we can just summon out Yata next turn, attack in for 200, and draw lock them. We can potentially Solemn whatever else they want to summon, or just Raigeki, what other monster they bring out. So I feel like we're in a pretty good spot here, even if they do banish. So they are indeed going to attack in and banish. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw another Mask of Darkness, which is pretty good. We can set up the loop again. I did check, and we did shuffle after that Forceful, so we just drew another Mask. We're going to bring out Yata here. They go for Ring. I think in hindsight, I actually should have let this go through with the Solemn, or held the Solemn, that is. But in the moment, I'm figuring they've got 4 cards in hand. We've got Raigeki to deal with one of their monsters. We're drawing into other things as well. If we can set up this Yata and just keep poking in, we might actually be able to just win the game here off this Yata lock early. So it's a bit of a gamble, but I do indeed go for the Solemn here, paying 4,000 to stop that ring, and they'll take 200 from that. And we'll pass back to them. No need to commit the Raigeki. They likely can't kill us this turn. I mean, they could have Reborn Lily, which would be bad. If they've got Reborn Lily, they probably are just going to win the game anyways, given we're at 4K. But I don't really want to commit anything into like an MST or something. Opponent's going to set one pass back to us. We draw an MST there. We fire the Raigeki. It's a Sinister Serpent. That makes me feel a little bit good because it might mean that they don't have any other good monsters in hand. But they did indeed know about the Raigeki from the Forceful. So maybe they were just setting the Serpent to get value off that, figuring that we would go for the Raigeki. Either way, we summon out this Yata, attack in for 200, pass back to them. They're not drawing again. We know one of the cards they have left. It is Serpent, which is annoying. We don't have really a way to stop that. And thus keep our Yata going. We could have maybe set the Mask instead here to try and get back the Time Seal and set up that lock, as Serpent doesn't stop the Time Seal lock, but we don't have a way to protect the Mask again. So, you know, I think that Yata is the better play here. Our opponent's going to set 2, pass back to us. We're going to fire an MST on their back row. It is a Raigeki, and this gives me some hope here. We're just going to set a Mask of Darkness, set a Solemn, pass back to our opponent. We don't really want to commit Yata into this because, you know, it won't do anything. And also setting Suk didn't really seem that good either. So we're just going to set the Mask here as the best play I think we have. Opponent's going to go for a Fiber Jar, trying to shuffle everything back. We are only at 4,000 life points, and this can allow them to get in for even more damage. So I do think that I do want to just Solemn this. So I Solemn it. There are some combinations of cards here that win them the game, but I feel pretty good about this overall. They've got Dark Hole, they've got Lily. That is one of the combinations that win them the game, but they'd already gone through Raigeki. So, like, I wasn't the most afraid of them winning here. But unfortunately, they did have what they needed. We also knew about the Serpent in hand, so, like, they really needed, like, 2 exact cards to deal with this. But sometimes, you know, the opponent will have that there. And, you know, we lost that game 1, but I'm excited for game 2. I think I do bring in the Noman's Crossout here because I realized that I don't really have an out to Serpent. I side out a Call the Haunted because, you know, with DD Warrior Ladies like running around, I don't think Call will be as useful. The idea behind Call is basically, you know, if I've got a Mask in graveyard, I can call it back and then Suk it down. But it's not the best, you know, combo in practice. So maybe in the future I'll cut Call entirely. Yeah, so I cut that. And then I also cut one more card. I think I might cut... oh, man. I wish I remember which one I cut. But, I mean, we might find out as we go here. But I do bring in the Nox. This is a great opening hand. We got Forceful. Unfortunately, we drew double Gravekeeper's Spy, which is a little bit annoying. But we're going to go for Forceful there, see what they've got, and see if they get a Reinforce the Army, DD Warrior Lady, Breaker, and Spy. I think of those, Dark Hole's the most annoying, because we just kind of want to set Spy, get another Spy right away. So we want to just send back Dark Hole. If we send back DD Warrior Lady, they can just, you know, get it back with reinforcing the army. And since they do have DD Warrior Lady, I don't think they're just going to blind fire reinforcements and go for Exiled. If they do, we've got another Gravekeeper Spy in hand, so we're kind of insulated against that as well. So I think that Dark Hole is the best thing to send back here. So we're just going to set a Spy, pass back to them. We know about the Breaker, so we don't want to commit our Dark Hole to board. They're going to bring out a DD Warrior Lady attack into our set. They're fine by that. They'll take the 5 and not banish. And we're just going to bring out this Spy. They're going to pass back to us. We draw Time Seal, so that's pretty good. We're going to set that as bait for the Breaker. They're going to just switch the DD Warrior Lady to defense, set one, set another, pass back to us. We draw Suk, which is pretty cool. We're just going to go for Dark Hole here, though, because we've got Yata in hand, so we can hit in, start the Yata lock. We've also got Spy to wall up as well. So I feel pretty good about this. We're going to bring out that Yata, attack in for 200 here. They've got Call, unfortunately, so they will be able to bring back that DD Warrior Lady, and we'll just, pass back to them, unfortunately. So they're going to attack in for 15. We could have fired the Time Seal at the end of last turn, just to sort of stop them from getting a draw here, but I don't have a way to recycle the Time Seal yet, so I don't really think it's the most useful thing to do, especially because we don't have a way to clear the DD Warrior Lady yet. So we'll just take the 15. They're just going to pass back to us. We draw Sakuratsu Armor. That is a way to clear the Warrior Lady. We're going to set the Spy, set the Saku, pass back to them. Unfortunately, they have been holding the Breaker, so they might commit the Breaker now that we've committed one more back row here just to pop it, and that would be kind of annoying for us. They've got Knock, so that's really rough for us. They'll banish the Spy, attack in with 15. We're just going to go for the Saku here because we need to clear that DD Warrior Lady. They're going to bring out a Breaker, try and use it on the back row. We'll chain Time Seal. That will deprive them of a draw next turn. If we draw Raigeki on top of that, we could go for the Raigeki now, but we don't need to. We can just summon out the Tsukuyomi, flip down the Breaker, and attack over it with the Suk. So we're just going to pass back to our opponent. We figured they don't have a hand rip because, they didn't use it on us before. They're going to go for a reinforcement here, grab a DD Warrior Lady, and commit that to field, attacking in for 1500. But we do have Yata in hand, so this might just be the end of the game here. We draw Graceful as well, so might as well fire that, see what we get. But I think this should probably be over. Nobleman plus Suk is a good sort of combination there. We're going to pitch a Suk, pitch a Sangan, because there's nothing really we want to search. We got Mask, we've got Suk, we've got Yata. Our hand is pretty good already. We're just going to bring out Yata, Raigeki, their DD Warrior Lady, attack in for 200, and they're going to take it. I feel really good about this. We've got Knock, so if they do want to set something here, we're good in that regard as well. They are indeed going to set something, pass back to us, and we draw Time Seal on top of everything else. We're going to bring out Yata, fire that Knock, and our opponent will admit defeat. That was just a Serpent, so it makes sense why they set it there. And yeah, they just had a Dark Hole, which won't do anything against Yata. Unfortunately, Dark Hole is a way to out the Suk Mask lock, which is why this kind of is a bit weaker than the Yata lock in many ways, even though your opponent might have monsters on field. They can just clear your stuff through other means. So I think Yata is a little bit stronger than the Suk Mask lock, but hopefully we can pull off the Suk Mask lock before the end of the video just to show you how it works. So we're going to go into game 3 here, and I think I keep the side deck relatively the same. I keep in the hand rips, I'm pretty sure, because you want the hand rips in a deck like this to deprive your opponent of as many resources as possible. So our opponent's going to draw Fire Forceful, send back a Gravekeeper Spy here, shuffle back that into the deck, and they're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Sakuratsu Armor here. We're going to bring out the Witch. We're going to set 2, just attack into their set. If it's like Sangan, we want to clear it now to make our Dark Hole more useful later. If it's Witch, it won't get destroyed. So I feel good about this either way. It's just a Witch. We'll take 100, pass back to them. We set 2 before attacking because in case it was like a Don Zaluk, which they could indeed be on, given they're on a Warrior deck. We don't want to discard one of these. I mean, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn are also very good cards that we don't necessarily want to discard. So maybe we should have actually just kept the traps in hand, but I do think that the traps are pretty valuable here, especially at protecting our Witch from a Warrior Lady. And speaking of, there is a Warrior Lady. Opponent's going to attack the Warrior Lady into the Witch. We've got that Saku to pop the DD Warrior Lady. Our opponent's going to think whether they want to attack the Witch into our Witch, and they're going to choose not to. I think that's the right play there. We're just going to Reborn that DD Warrior Lady, attack that into the Witch, banish both, and then attack directly for 1100. That's kind of a cute way to clear that. And we're going to pass back to our opponent. They're going to go for a DD Warrior Lady here, attack into our Witch. We don't have a way to protect that, so we'll take 4. They will indeed banish that, and they're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Yata, though. That's about the best draw we could get here. We're going to summon out that Yata, attack in for 200 damage here. That will indeed go through, and we're just going to pass back to them. They're going to, think about this, just set 1, pass back to us. We draw Suk, which is pretty great. And we're going to go for the Dark Hole here. We could have potentially gone for the Change of Heart first, just to see what it is. But I figure, if it's Witch or Sangan, we really don't want to Dark Hole that. But, Change of Hearting won't necessarily prevent us from having to Dark Hole that later in the future. So I think it's just fine just to go for Dark Hole now, get rid of the card. It is indeed a Gravekeeper Spy, so I feel pretty good about that. And now we'll attack in for 200 here, keeping the Yata lock online. We're going to pass back to our opponent. They're going to go for a Premature Burial, bringing back that Gravekeeper's Spy here. That's kind of unfortunate for us. They're going to attack in for 1200. We will take that, and they'll pass back to us. We draw Solemn, which is kind of cool here. We actually have a pretty neat play that we can do. I'm going to think about this, and I am just going to do kind of a weird play. I'm going to summon out, or I'm going to activate Time Seal, go for a Sook on their spy to set it down, and then I'm going to set Solemn. I figure their back row isn't like an MST or something, or else they would have fired it. Although maybe they were just exercising an abundance of caution there. And once they try and flip up the spy, we can just Solemn that and cut them off of that. So I feel like this is ultimately pretty good for us. And this is a decent position to be in. Unfortunately, it was indeed an MST. They were just being very cautious with it, which was the right thing to do here, I think. And it really did come back to bite us. Maybe we should have set the change as well, just to prevent them from doing that. But, I mean, it is what it is. We can't really do much about that. However, they do bring out a spy and attack here, and this actually does give us another option to set up the lock with what we have in hand. So we're going to draw a Sangan here. Unfortunately, we would have liked to draw another back row instead. We're going to go for a Yata. We're going to fire Change of Heart on their spy, crash the spies together, clear both of those, and attack in for another 200 damage, keeping the Yata lock online. So our opponent's on one card in a dream. We just got to hope it's nothing that can get them out of this. And unfortunately for us, they're going to go for Reborn. So they'll Reborn back that Gravekeeper spy there. We can't really do anything about that. We draw an MST. Luckily, our opponent is on really low resources, but it might not be good enough for us here. They're going to set another card here, pass back to us. We draw Solemn. That's okay, but we're still not drawing a way to clear their board and set up the Yata yet again. Opponent's going to bring out a DD War Lady there. We could have potentially Solemned that and kept our Sangan on field. Might have been the right thing to do, but like then our opponent could potentially go for major damage later because we'll be at pretty low life points after that. And I do have like Sook and Yata in hand, so I mean the one thing I'd search would be like Mask of Darkness to get back Time Seal, but I don't have any way to protect the Mask of Darkness, so yeah, I don't know. I think this is fine. We draw Painful Choice, and I think this is a very, very interesting Painful Choice here. So I have basically two options. Our opponent is not going aggressive with what they've got, so it might mean that they don't really have much to do here. And if we can potentially deck thin, like keep the most powerful cards in our deck, the cards that just win the game here, then we could potentially draw an out to their board in the coming turns. And I check my deck and I don't quite see 5 cards that like win us the game on the spot. Raigeki wins us the game. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like Knock doesn't quite do it. Yeah, just like Raigeki, Ring is kind of good because Ring can pop the spy, but it doesn't clear their other card. So Ring doesn't quite do it. So I'm thinking here, like, I'm basically thinking like, you know, I don't have a 5 that I can send to just win me the game here. So I just have to, you know, deck thin. But I think what I actually should have done is I should have sent like 2 Mask of Darkness, maybe a Witch, and like some Time Seals just to try and set up the lock. But I mean, there's a chance that we could just lose out on a lot of masks though. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of iffy here. I think I might not have made the right choice on this Painful, but I wasn't quite sure what 5 to send, and I'm not sure there were a correct 5 to send. So I send Double Knock, I send you know, Coffee, I send Forceful, and I send MST. I cut a Duo, I think, from the side decking because I was basically like, well, Duo isn't quite the best in this format, and I want to make room for the Noblemans. But I don't think I should have sent the Noblemans here. I think this was actually a major misplay, as we'll see later in the game, as Noblemans are an out to something that I wasn't quite considering. And I think that this comes from, like, you know, once you play this deck more and you get, like, more experience with it, you learn, like, what to actually keep in and keep out and stuff. And that's why testing decks are so important. This was my first game with this deck, and I think I did overall okay with this deck, but I do think that this was a major misplay sending the Nox, as you really do want these in deck later. Tsukuyomi plus Nox to be very good at clearing some very problematic cards, and you might see that come up later in the game there. But we deck then. They give us a Comfy, as that is very useless here. And yeah, we can't quite do anything here. We're just going to pass back to our opponent. We could potentially set the Sook as like a defensive option here. That might have been the correct thing to do. I think it actually would have been, because we are in a very precarious spot here. They're going to go for Painful of their own. Send a bunch here. They're going to send Sangan, Call, Rota, and Duo. And I just give them the call because we've got MST to deal with that. So I feel like it's okay. Unfortunately, we kind of have to save the MST for when they're gonna go for the call because they've got Sangan and Graves, so they can, if we blind MST, or not blind MST, but if we preemptively MST, then they can just chain call and bring back Sangan and get a search, which wouldn't be the best for us. But they're gonna flip up Lily. That does just lose us the game here, so we do have to flip Solemn Judgment and deal with that Lily that way. They're gonna choose not to switch the Spy to attack and just attack in. They're gonna set the call. We're gonna set this Spy, pass back to our opponent, and they are going to go for a Mirage. That is really unfortunate for us. They're going to fire that Mirage. We got to think here, and I just let it go through because I know that the set is not an MST, and we got Comfy to potentially snipe an MST out of their hand. So I think this is ultimately fine on our part. But yeah, there is a bit of a debate here. Like, do we even fire the Comfy? And like, they've used up one MST. They've got 2 left in deck. If they didn't draw MST, they're losing like 4 cards from their hand. So is it really worth going for the Comfy? I think ultimately I do just go for it. And I do think it is worth it going for it. We do drop pretty low, which is unfortunate. But like if they did draw an MST here, this would just get them back in the game. And I just want to clear it. I want to save the MST for the call that they've got. So yeah, I feel like this is ultimately the right play, but it is a bit weird. We could have just preemptively MST'd and hoped to draw our last MST remaining in deck for their call. I think this is the best play we can do here. So we take a look at their hand, see they don't have MST, but if they draw MST off the top, I think the thing we want them least to have is the Raigeki, because, if they clear our monster, then they just win the game, basically. So we are going to send that Raigeki, and we're going to flip up this Spy, bring out another Spy from deck here. We're going to summon this Tsukuyomi. Again, we did the manual position change on the Spy, but now effects can actually affect the battle position, so we can just flip this down again. But we're just going to pass back to our opponent with that set Spy there. They're going to discard their entire hand. We feel pretty good about that. And they're going to pass back to us. We drop Pot of Greed here. They're going to go for the Mirage. Now we don't have, clean out to it. So we're just going to fire this Mystical Space Typhoon. And unfortunately, the call is now online for them. We're going to go for Pot here, draw 2. We draw Graceful Charity as well, which is pretty good. We're going to go for Graceful here as well. We got Time Seal, so we got the lock set up over the course of just a couple turns, especially because we got Mirror Force as well. So if we set Mask this turn, and they, basically blank one draw, we just do win the game. So I feel really good about this. We are in a really, really good position here. And our opponent's just going to pass back to us. We are going to think about this, and we're just going to go for it, I think. We're going to fire that Time Seal, flip up the Mask, add back the Time Seal. And then we're just going to summon out the Sook, set the Mask, set the Time Seal. And as long as that last card in hand is nothing that stops this combo, we do indeed just win the game. As, if they want to get aggressive, go for call on Lily. We've got this Mirror Force, and I feel pretty good about that. And then, we can also potentially, wait until we draw the other MST in deck, get aggressive with the Raigeki, things like that. And yeah, so I think this game is basically wrapped up as long as the last card in hand isn't anything good here. Unfortunately for us, it is Jinzo, which is pretty much the best thing that they could have here, as this shuts down our board here, shuts down Time Seal, shuts down Mirror Force, and that is really bad. I mean, we got Raigeki to deal with it, but they've got Call to bring it back. So this is really, really bad for us. Our opponent's just going to attack in to our Spy, pass back to us, we draw another Mask. We're just going to go for Raigeki there, flip up the Mask, and add back that Time Seal. But, I mean, maybe we should have even gone for Solemn here. Maybe we should have gone for Solemn. But they would have just called in the end phase here anyways to bring back Jinzo. Like, as long as they call this turn, like, they're fine. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe by forcing them to call in the end phase, we could have chained Time Seal, deprive them of a draw, and at least been in a slightly better position. But once that Jinzo's set up, especially since we are out of a lot of our spell outs to it, we're in a really, really bad spot. And that's why we should have kept the Nox in, just in case we ended up in this situation. We're going to attack in for 900 off the Mask, just trying to bait out the Jinzo right away. But unfortunately, they don't go for it. We're just going to go for this Time Seal now. They changed the call. But yeah, I mean, either way, there wasn't really anything we could do here. We could have potentially waited, but I figured, we want to bait out the call now as opposed to later, as we do just want the Jinzo on field to deal with, and they can just do this anyways. So yeah, maybe this was a mistake. Maybe this was too greedy, but they were going to do this pretty much anyways, no matter what we did. So I don't know. it's a bit weird. We draw 2 off the Mirage there. They're going to knock, so they do get the last mask out of our deck. They're going to hit in to the Spy, and all the rest of our Spies are in the grave. So we draw the MST there, so we are going to pop the Mirage. And Scientists would normally be able to deal with Jinzo, but we're at 950, so we're just slightly off from what we need to actually bring out something to deal with the Jinzo. So unfortunately, this likely will be the end of the game. We're just going to set this Tsukuyomi here, pass back to our opponent. They're going to attack into it. We can flip down the Jinzo at least, but that probably won't be enough here. We'd have to draw like Solemn Judgment to then stop the Jinzo from being able to flip up. We're just going to set a Scientist, set a Sakuretsu Armor. We're going to flip a Time Seal here. The Scientist will wall us up for a turn because they won't be drawing here. And then if we like summon out the Suk or set the Suk next turn, and we draw the Solemn, which we do have 1 Solemn remaining in our deck, we can potentially Solemn Judgment the flip summon of the Jinzo later. So they're going to flip up that Jinzo, attack into our Scientist here. That will indeed go through. They're going to pass back to us. We do draw that last Solemn, so that's pretty good. We're going to Suk down their Jinzo, set the Solemn, pass back to them, and we just got to hope they don't draw something good here. They're going to flip up that Jinzo. We've got Solemn there. We'll get rid of that Jinzo. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We just got to hope that that set isn't anything good. We're going to set this mask, set the Sakuretsu Armor, pass back to them. Let's hope they don't draw an out to this. They're going to think about this a bit, and they are going to think for a long time, check our graveyard, and then they're going to go for Magician of Faith, so that we'll be able to bring back a Monster Reborn here, and they're going to go for Dark Hole. I mean, Reborn enough. I mean, that'll just do it, because Reborn for Jinzo shuts off our entire plays, and unfortunately that will indeed be the end of the game. So quite unfortunate for us. I do think they sequenced this right, as if we had like IO set, then Dark Hole. You want the Dark Hole to fizzle before the Reborn, because Reborn gets back Jinzo, which shuts down my deck. But yeah, very, very intense game in this game 3. And I think it does show some of the power of this deck. I mean, we got them down to very, very low resources in a very, very compromising position. But, you know, our opponent did have cards that did get them out of it. And in a format with so many power cards, you're going to wind up in situations where that does happen. And this combo is really powerful when it goes off, but it also is somewhat fragile. So it's good to keep in mind if you are playing this deck for yourself. Also, you know, it's very easily hateable, like Decree, Jinzo, etc. Like those cards really do just eat this deck alive, which is another reason why like Dust Tornadoes are good to bring in for the Decrees. But yeah, so that's what the deck looks like against more of a meta deck. And I do think it put up a good fight, but I've also got another match against a bit of a non-meta deck just to sort of show what it can do when it really gets off the races. Okay, we got another game here against History of YGO1. Frequent guests on the channel, always a pleasure to have them on. They're going to win the rock, paper, scissors there, and we are going to go into the game. And this is a pretty good opener. I mean, Pot Graceful, Mirage, MSC, that is about as good as you can ask for. If only we had been able to go first here. Luckily, our opponent's just going to set 2, pass back to us, so it might not matter. We're going to go for the pot, draw 2. We're going to fire the coffee just so we are a bit more educated on what we want to pitch to Graceful here. And we'll indeed go through. We see they're on a bit of a degenerate deck of their own. They got Spell Cancel, Rivalry of Warlords, Premature Burial, and 7 Tools of the Bandit. So this is likely a deck that's, you know, basically sets up Rivalry, sets up Ojamatrio, and then just try and burn you. Like draw into their burn spells after you're basically locked out of the game. But yeah, this is a bit tricky what to send. I think we want to send the Premature Burial here, as that would be annoying. We don't want to necessarily let them get out the Spell Canceller. We send the Spell Canceller to just get it back with Premature. We do have MST for that, but we kind of want to save our MST for our Mirage. And we also want to make a bit of a play here with like Scientist. So I think that we do just send the Premature. We use 1 MST on their back row, save the other MST for Mirage, and that should be pretty good. So we're just going to send the Premat indeed. And now we know that they've got 7 tools, Rivalry, and Spell Canceller. We're going to go for this Graceful here, draw 3, and pitch a Mirage and Solemn because, you know, we drew monsters, so we can't quite set our entire hand here. So maybe it was a mistake to pitch the Premat, but I think it's ultimately fine. We should be able to clear up their board here. And we've got this MST for their Rivalry, which is the only thing we really worry about. We're going to bring out Dark Balls off Scientist. Unfortunately, it's Roulette Barrel, which does wall that up. So we're just going to pay another 1,000, bring out 1,000 Eyes, suck up that Roulette Barrel there, set the Solemn, set the MST, pass back to our opponent, and let's see what they do. they're going to set 2, set 3, pass back to us. That's kind of annoying because something we could have done here is just preemptively gone for like MST on one of their back rows and then Solemn to the other. But with 3 back row, it's a bit trickier. Our opponent's going to go for Rivalry. We're just going to use the MST on that. And we're going to summon out Yata Grassi. We're going to attack indirectly for 200 with Yata. They've got Ring, so we will take the 200 there. We know that if we fire Solemn, they're just going to fire 7 tools, so it's not really worth doing that. And we're just going to attack in for 300. A bit unfortunate, though. Maybe we should have just gone for the Solemn to clear the 7 tools, but we don't want to get into too compromising of a situation. Our opponent's going to go for Reborn, going for Left Barrel. Again, we could have Solemn, but we know about the 7 tools, so it's not really worth it. They're going to tribute out a Spell Canceller there, attack over the Scientist, and that is unfortunate. We'll take 15 there. They're going to pass back to us. We draw another Spy, which is, something you never want to do. We accidentally misclick and summon the Spy when we do want to set it. There's no reason to summon it here. And they're just going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Saku, which is pretty good here. We can Saku the Spell Canceller. We're just going to flip up a Spy to deck then here. If they do attack in with the Spell Canceller, we feel fine about that. We're also going to set this Mask here to potentially get back like our other Solemn there, which can be pretty good. Our opponent's going to attack in with the Spell Canceller. We've got the Saku. They've got a 7 tools. We're just going to go for a Solemn on the 7 tools, and unfortunately, they've got a Solemn of their own. So we'll drop down pretty low here, down to 1050, and they're just going to pass back to us. We draw Time Seal here. So we're going to think about this. We're going to flip up the Mask. We're going to add back this Saku, so that way they can't attack over the Mask, and we're just going to set the Saku, set the Time Seal, set Spy, pass back to them. So they basically have like 1 draw here. Unfortunately, we don't have a Sook to reset the Mask, but we are just going to fire the Time Seal now and hope that we get the Sook. Unfortunately, Ring will not quite do it. We'll set the Ring, pass back to them. They don't draw here, and we draw Solemn. We're going to set the Solemn. The Solemn does sort of trade for whatever draw they get, so that's fine. Our opponent's going to set another, pass back to us, and now we draw Sook, so this will indeed be the lock. So we can set down the Mask with the Sook because it was in defense. We can then flip it back up later because battle position had not changed. So we are able to get back that Time Seal there, and we can set up the lock again. We're going to pass back to our opponent, and they draw their last card, hopefully, and they're just going to switch the Spell Canceller defense, and we're going to go for Time Seal here. And now we can set up the lock. We're going to set down the Mask, and yeah, unfortunately, they do get 1 draw here because we can't then flip up the Mask, after we've done it. So actually, this will be their last draw. They are going to set 1, pass back to us, and we draw a Sakuretsu Armor here. In standby phase, they're just going to go for a Nightmare Wheel. We're going to fire Solemn Judgment as we can't afford to take that damage. And this will be the lock now if they don't have a way to deal with it. We're going to add back that Time Seal, summon that Sook, set down that Time Seal, pass back to our opponent. And now our opponent, should they have gotten a draw there? Yeah, they should have, because we hadn't fired Time Seal the prior turn. No, and we had fired Time Seal, hadn't we? I don't know. It's fine. They won't really be doing much more here. We're going to fire that Time Seal, flip up a Mask, and get back that Time Seal. And now the lock is super in place. We're going to set down that Sook and pass back to our opponent. They do not get the draw here. But yeah, they're just going to pass back to us, not doing anything. And we're just going to fire this Time Seal, flip up the Mask, add back that Time Seal, set it down, and pass back to them. So as long as they don't have anything here, we do have inevitability, because basically the idea is that we need to have a way to deal with both their back row. No point in basically pressing forward until we have a way to deal with that. But once we do, eventually we'll draw into like Raigeki to clear their Spell Canceller. We can set down the Tsukuyomi, the Spell Canceller with the Tsukuyomi, and then go for Raigeki then, and then just go for a big aggressive push after we have a way to shut off their back row. So that's why we're just biding our time here. They're just going to pass back to us. And yeah, we're going to go for a Time Seal. We're going to add back the Time Seal. And then we're going to summon out Sook, set down the Mask, set the Time Seal, pass back to them. And we're just going to, keep doing this dance. They set another card here. But we do just have to keep doing this. We flip up the Mask, add back the Time Seal. I'm just going to try and blaze through this as quickly as possible. But since we draw Time Seal here, we can actually go for Mask on Solemn. Also, we forgot to discard for hand size, but it really doesn't matter at this point. But yeah, whenever we draw a Time Seal, we can then Mask back for a Solemn. Solemn will trade with one of their back row. So this is ultimately pretty fine. We're going to then summon that Sook. They're going to flip up Gravity Bind, but that is fine. Because, we just need to draw into our MSC, and that will be fine. We're going to flip up the Time Seal, Mask back the Time Seal, set down the Time Seal, and yeah, we're just gonna keep going. there's no reason for us to not do this, but it is very degenerate. We just got to hope that the cards that we need aren't in the top couple cards of our deck and it doesn't last too long. We do have the Raigeki, which is another tool to this. So we're just going to keep the loop going. We should have discarded there for hand size. And yeah, we're going to fire the Time Seal again, flip up the mask, add back the Time Seal. Go for the Sook, discard a mask. It doesn't really matter at this point. We're going to go for Time Seal, flip up the mask, add back a Time Seal. You know the song and dance at this point. We're just going to keep doing this. Flip the mask, add back a Solemn since we drew a Time Seal. Go for Time Seal here, summon out Sook, set a Time Seal and a Solemn, pass back to our opponent. And we're going to go for Time Seal here. Flip up the mask, add back Time Seal. We need like the MST basically in our deck to deal with the Gravity Bind. And then the double Solemns here will deal with their 2 remaining back row. And we will indeed have a slot open because Time Seal will be gone. So we're just going to keep doing this. Flip up the mask, add back the Time Seal, summon out Sook, set the Time Seal. You know the song and dance at this point. But yeah, this is the sort of degenerate end game for the deck. But eventually we will draw what we need. It's just we're not drawing it yet. So unfortunately, we're going to have to drag this out a bit longer for our opponent. I apologize to our opponent for this, but yeah, now we draw the MST, so now we should be able to win. So we're going to go for Time Seal to clear up the back row space. Summon out Sook, set down the Spell Canceller, fire MST on the Gravity Bind. They've got another Gravity Bind, but we got Solemn. So that will clear both of those. We've got Raigeki to clear their monster, and now this should be the end of the game, and that will be the end of the game for them. They're going to admit defeat. They also, mentioned, like, in the siding that they really should have gone for Call of the Haunted plus this additional Spell Cancer that they had in hand, and yeah, that would have been the correct play here, as setting up 2 Spell Cancers makes it very hard for me to actually deal with them. I'm not actually sure if I have a clean out to that. Yeah, I don't really think I have a clean out to double Spell Canceller because I can only Sook once per turn. So that actually would have potentially been the end of the game for me if they'd gone for that earlier. And when you do get in this lock, like, you do want to sort of just put your pieces on the table as soon as possible because otherwise your opponent's just gaining like so much advantage and just has complete control of the game. And you're never going to get more advantage because you're never going to draw more. So you just have to go for that sort of thing early. But yeah, so that took a while. So I apologize to our opponent again. But we're going to go into game 2 here now. I do bring in heavy Harpies, Dust Tornado, all that stuff because our opponent is on a heavy back row focused deck. And yeah, we will be going second here. Our opponent's going to set 4, set another pass back to us. We draw Heavy Storm, which is pretty much the perfect card to draw here. They have Geometrio, so, that will indeed get rid of the Geometrio there. And we're going to go for pot here. Draw 2. Fire Comfy on that last card in hand is a Spell Cancer, so we're perfectly fine with that. We're going to set this mask, set a Saku, set an MST, and set an IO, and I feel like this should be pretty good here. Unfortunately for us, they're going to set 1 Fire Morphing Jar, so we do lose our Sook, and they draw 5 more cards in hand here. They're going to go for pot. We've got IO to stop that. They've got Spell Canceller to bring out, though. They're going to set 2, pass back to us, and they're going to flip up a Rivalry of Warlords. So this is really unfortunate for us. We don't really have too many outs besides the Dust Tornado in our deck. Ring can also get rid of the Spell Canceller, so that is also an out to this lock. And they've got Nightmare Wheel as well, so they'll start burning us here. And this is what their deck does. So, kind of cool to see both the degenerate decks have their chance to shine here. They're going to pass back to us. We draw a Dust Tornado, so we're going to set a Graceful Charity and a Dust Tornado here. Maybe we should have just saved the Dust Tornado for when we also drew like a Solemn as well to stop their back row. But they've got Solemns, they've got 7 tools, so they're likely going to draw into more of those. And we've already got 3 back row, many of which we can't use because we don't have any beasts, so we can't activate Call. They're not attacking, so we can't activate Saku, and we can't activate MST at all here. So I figure it's just good to go for the Dust Tornado and Charity now. And, if they've got a way to counter it, they've got a way to counter it. But this is to sort of play around if they've got a Dust Tornado of their own. So they're going to go for the Nightmare Will burn us for 500 more. And then we draw Breaker, which we can't summon due to Rivalry. We're going to go for the Dust on the Rivalry. They've got 7 tools. Quite unfortunate for us. We do still have Ring in deck, so Ring will be able to deal with Spell Canceller if we draw it. But we do have to draw it because, again, I should have had more Dust Tornadoes in the side deck. Unfortunately, I do not. But this game taught me that, I really do need to have them. We draw Time Seal, so that's kind of funny. We can set that and use it here. They're going to go for a Nightmare Will again. Pass back to us. We're just going to go for Time Seal, prevent them from drawing next turn, pitch a Mirage. That's really useless for us here. and they're going to pass back to us. We do draw a ring, so that we'll be able to deal with Spell Canceller if it goes through. They're going to burn us for 500 more. We're going to fire Ring in the end phase. They've got Solemn, though, so that will stop that. And this is very unfortunate for us. I'm not sure if we have it out remaining in deck. I don't think we do. But we'll just let them have their fun and burn us to death here. So yeah, we'll just keep pitching, drawing, pitching, and so on and so forth. And who knows, maybe we'll draw an out. Unfortunately, that is not one. And we'll just, keep going here. They've got Ring, though, and that will indeed end the game here. So, game 2, they got to show off their degenerate stuff. We got to show off ours game 1. So, kind of cool to see. Let's see which deck will win in game 3. We're going to go into game 3 here, and let's see how we do. We're going to go first, and we draw a pretty good opener. Not the best for us, though. But we're just going to set the Spy, set Time Seal, set Solemn Judgment, pass back to our opponent. Hopefully this will be decent enough. Our opponent's going to... Oh, they're not going to go for that. That was a misplay. They're going to go for Pot of Greed here, draw 2. They're going to set 3, set 4, set 5, pass back to us. Unfortunately, we don't have like Harpies or anything this game. In standby phase, they're going to go for a trio. That is ultimately fine because we're saving like our Solemn for like Rivalry or something like that. And we've also got MST for Rivalry. So we don't really mind if they give us trio here. They're going to go for Rivalry here. We're going to chain MST to the Rivalry. They've got Solemn. We've got Solemn though. So that we'll deal with that. Unfortunately, they've got 7 tools on top of that, so they will be able to stop our Solemn there, which is quite unfortunate. Luckily for us, though, we do have Dark Host. We'll be able to clear up the board here. We will take 900 from that, which is kind of rough. We do have the Sangan to hit in for 1,000 there. So if they don't have any like monsters or anything to deal with this, then we're doing pretty good. We're going to go for Time Seal now, as I feel like our board is somewhat fragile, and I'd prefer them not to draw any cards here to try and get out of it. So we're just going to go for Time Seal. They're just going to pass back to us. We draw a Graveyard Spy. We can't summon either of the monsters in our hand due to Rivalry, but we can attack in for 1,000 more. So that is what we'll do here. And they're just going to pass back to us, or we're going to pass back to them, that is. And they draw 1 card, and that will indeed be the end of the game, as they just have Pre-Mount, Rivalry, and Soul Exchange, none of which will actually do anything here. Last card was Gravity Bind, so Sangan gets under that, so that will indeed be the end of the game. So I'm not necessarily going to call these last games here good games, if they were very degenerate. But, it's kind of cool to see 2 degenerate decks go up against each other, as it forces you to play in a way that you're not really used to. But still, this deck did manage to get off its Suclock game 1, which was kind of cool to see. And yeah, I mean, this deck I think is like neat. I do think that like the combo can go off sometimes, but a lot of the times you're like really just, in a tough spot, and you're just like trying to claw your way towards that combo, clawing your way, hoping that your opponent will not draw what they need to actually out your board or your combo. So I'm not the biggest fan of this deck. I think it might be like Rogue or Tier 2, especially with like more optimization and also more practice playing it. I do think that like, game 1 I might have thrown by, setting the wrong things off Painful and just playing a bit too greedily in game 1. But I do think that like this is a deck that really needs people to sort of play it for a bit to really get comfortable with it and know how to play it well. So if people do pick it up and play it, that way, then maybe it can rise in the ranks. But for now, I'm going to say I think it's probably not the best deck in the format. Still cool to see Tsukuyomi doing things this early in its history. But what do you all think of the deck? Do you think that this deck is pure cope, or do you think that it's better than I'm giving it credit for, and that if built differently or played better, it could actually be pretty good? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you like this sort of content, please do subscribe to the channel. We got a lot of retro Yu-Gi-Oh content coming, and also a big backlog that you can dive into as well to see games in Vampire format and any other format previous in the game's history. Also, if you want to play these games for yourself, you can head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, link in the description down below. It's a great place to find games in Vampire format and any other format that I featured on the channel. And speaking of the channel, we've also got a Patreon server, or not server, but a Patreon. Link in the description down below. There's a poll on that Patreon right now, just asking what people would like for perks in the future. I'm going to keep that up till the end of the year, so you do have time to vote in that. And if you are interested in that, head on over there and vote. Also, if you sign up as a patron, you will get shouted out in these videos. So big shout outs to Rinswin and Bren Donker. Those are the 2 Patreons we've got so far. Thank you so much for your support. You help me do what I do here. And I couldn't do it without y'all. But I hope that you enjoyed this video as always. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.